Good morning. Welcome to Top Business Priorities in the COVID-19 Pandemic, a guide to thinking differently. I'm Joel Beatson with Landscape Alberta. I'm joined by Jacki Hart, all the way from Muskoka, Ontario. As one of Canada's most sought after business speakers, Jacki brings a career full of landscape business management success. And just like most of you, her passion for landscapes and plants far outweighed her business management talent early in her first 25 years as a contractor. Her second career started in 2012, leveraging both her hard-earned business acumen plus passion for helping entrepreneurs succeed. And as a speaker, workshop facilitator, and business coach, Jacki focuses on helping others grow both their leadership and their business management skills. Having recently launched her online business academy, including her new COVID business boot camp, which today is a preview of,
Yes.
if I would say, and runs the next couple of weeks. So there'll be more information about that during the presentation. Jacki has published over 150 business magazine articles to her credit. When she's not at work, she enjoys her time in the garden, kayaking, or snowshoeing in Muskoka. And Jacki and I, probably 15 years, maybe, Jacki, we've known each other. And
how long have you been at work?
Yesterday, but yeah, a long time, almost 20 years. But
so it's over that.
Yeah. And Jacki made a joke yesterday about before she had gray hair, and I think it was before I could grow a beard. So that's how how long. And now I have gray in my beard. Yeah. So it's please welcome Jacki, and we'll begin here. And just a couple of brief notes before we start. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. There's a chat window on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll be doing my best to manage those questions and asking them either as they come up, or we'll save some time at the end too to go through some Q&As. So please, Jacki.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Joel, and hello, Alberta. I'm assuming most of you are from Alberta. I'll apologize in advance if I keep clearing my throat. I've had bronchitis, so I'll sip on my lemon and hot water and carry on, hopefully without coughing. And it's not COVID. So we're here to talk about COVID-19 and the ways in which it's changing and impacting your business. So I just want to start out with one little tool to think about, and that is a way to keep moving forward when things get really crazy and derail you a little bit. So that's by asking yourself, what, so what, and now what? So what has changed? Well, what hasn't changed is probably more to the point at the moment. But what has changed with respect to how you can operate your business, the things that you have to have in place that you didn't have to have in place a month or 2 or 12 ago? And so what does that mean for your business? What do those changes that have come externally, things that you have no control over, what does that mean for your business? And now what can you do to be successful within that new climate? That's what we're going to talk about in the next sort of 40, 45 minutes here. And there's a saying, I'm not sure who coined it, but I'm going to borrow it and acknowledge anonymous, that says, don't let a crisis go to waste. And I think one of the important things to think about when your business is in a crisis, whether it's something like this, that's a pandemic, it's been imposed upon your business, restrictions by government, changes in the community, changes to personal protective equipment and processes and measures and physical distancing, all those things. What does that mean to your business? And how can you let this crisis elevate your ability to manage in a period of stress and crisis? So it's about growing through this period as opposed to being paralyzed by it. It's about adapting quickly and being able to pivot very, very quickly, as I'm sure all of you have experienced in the last few weeks, maybe a month or so. What worked last week isn't necessarily what's working this week, and what worked a month ago isn't necessarily what's working now, and what's you're going to need to do 2 weeks ago might be very different from this week. So you need to be able to adapt very quickly and just pivot and respond. We need to lean into the things that we can control and influence. And you've got to learn about what's happening around you that you hadn't expected, and keep learning about what's changing when it's changing. And this is a great time as well when you're in a crisis or your business is in a crisis that you'd not anticipated, to identify resilience. And I'm finding company by company that I work with, as a business coach, every business owner is starting to notice who on the team has the most resilience and who's rising up calmly and just taking things in stride the best. And that's one of the things that you can benefit from in a crisis. So I'm just going to, click the right button. I hope. There we go. And so this is a time where you've got to be thinking differently. Albert Einstein was known to say we can't solve a problem with the same thinking that we used when we created it. The challenge here is the problem is that the budget and the way your business communicates with everyone that it touches, the plans that you had in place, the strategic plan for the year, the policies and procedures that you normally follow, they're all for pre-COVID, right? And so the problem is that the environment is now different. And that makes all of your previous processes null and void. That's the problem. That's why you need to change your thinking and think differently. So I've put together for today, and for the boot camp that I'm starting next week, the 5 C's of COVID. Just an easy way to think about what are the main things I need to be focusing on. Your cash flow and numbers, your communication, the company culture, your course of action, and compliance. So I'm going to go through each of those one at a time. And so COVID, cash flow, and numbers. Worth considering that none of us know how this year is going to pan out. None of us know how the economy is going to emerge from the current pandemic situation, whether or not in Alberta the curve is going to flatten or spike back up again or start to tail off. None of us know whether or not there will be a second or a third wave of community spread and of COVID cases, which is going to impose measures again, possibly restrictions in business activity again. I understand you guys have got it made relative to Ontario, so be grateful for that, because in Ontario, there is no landscape construction right now. And in most large cities, there is no landscape maintenance. There's no spring cleanups. None of that's allowed. So I understand from Joel that most of you are able to at least be operating fairly normally, but under new circumstances. So the impact of COVID on your business is first and foremost going to result in changes to cash, changes to your cash flow, and changes to the available amount your business now, which we're going to get to in the compliance piece, but that's costing money. And so that's it, adding downtime to labor. It's adding cost for personal protective equipment. It may be adding cost to the time of doing projects because you've got more than one vehicle going to a site. Maybe you cannot put more than one person in a vehicle and to maintain physical distancing. So it's going to be challenging to preserve cash. And what it means is you're probably going to have to make some tough decisions. It probably means that you're going to have to think about, what do you have now that you have because it was convenient or it was something that you wanted to have in the business, as opposed to what you need to have in the business. Lots and lots of people are renegotiating payments, new terms on leases and loans. Some are being able to furlough their payments. In other words, take 2 or 3 months worth of payments right now and then put them off for 3 or 4 months. How you negotiate that is different from business to business, and it's different from lender to lender. So some are taking April, May, and June payments, putting them off to September, October, November, which doubles up the payments for September, October, November. Some are able to negotiate to take April, May, June's payments and pay half starting in September, plus all of September's payments. So you're making a payment and a half for 6 months, as opposed to double payments for 3 months. Some are taking April, May, and June and extending the term of a lease so that you might be paying interest only in these 3 months. And then your lease will actually, on the piece of equipment or vehicle, will actually go 3 months further. That's a way to preserve cash right now. If your business is shut down or your business is restricted in what it can do with respect to sales and revenue, then you've got to look at the other side. You've got to look at how can you preserve enough cash to make it through should the curve start to spike up again and the government says, nope, you got to shut down. How do you manage to continue paying all of the expenses of your business? So there are government programs to leverage. We all know that the government just the day before yesterday opened up the CEWS, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. And so that is allowing employers who qualify to get a 75% wage subsidy up to $58,000 and change for people who they have on payroll. So that I think is going to last for 3 months, possibly 4. I forget. But there are government programs. The Canada Emergency Response Benefit is another one that helped people through if their EI was running out or had run out, or they had to be laid off without being able to collect EI. The CERB was there to help. There's also a $40,000 loan to small businesses. My bank called me yesterday and said, "You haven't applied for the loan yet. When are you applying for it?" I'm like, tomorrow? I don't know if I'm going to need it or not. And she says, well, you should apply for it first and get it. And it runs kind of like a line of credit. It'll show up in your online banking as another credit card or a line of credit. But you have those funds available to you. And as long as you repay that entire amount by the end of December 31st, 2021, in some way, shape, or form, with a wave of a magical wand, the federal government is going to forgive 10,000 of the 40,000. So I'm waiting to find out for sure from my bank whether or not that 40,000 will show as revenue, or if it's going to, the 10,000 will show as revenue, or if it's going to show balance sheet as a forgiven loan. I'm not clear on how we're going to handle that from an accounting point of view, but there's great government programs available, and so you should leverage them. I've
never heard from a bank so much, Jackie.
I know. I know. It's like I'm their newest best friend, and I'm my only employee. I run a consulting company. I'm it. Yeah. So, but you're right though. The banks have been, I think, very ready to help businesses because the end goal here is to emerge from this period of time with a viable business, with a viable team, and with your customer base intact, with your brand intact, with your suppliers intact, and the cash to get you there. That's really the outcome that you're looking for. So everyone is, the bank and the government is trying their best. Yes, they want your money, but they want your business. They want to keep your business. So they're doing their best to help you through this sticky bit. Revising budgets and scenarios. So think about this for a moment. Those of you who had a budget, I wish you could put your hands up and say, yes, I had a budget going into this. But if you had a budget that you'd already prepared, a year ago, just over a year ago, I was in Calgary and had 30 wonderful Landscape Alberta members taking an LMN budgeting workshop with me in Calgary. And LMN has a free online budgeting software tool for the landscape industry. If you've never used it or you don't have a budget, just go LMN and get the free software and create a budget for yourself, because what you thought of your plan was going to be for 2020 is no longer valid. So that budget that you may have already created for this year, that you may have already been cranking out quotes and estimates and contract pricing with, we'll call that your green budget. That was the budget that you created to get you into this year's marketplace before COVID came along. So now what you need to have is what I'm calling an amber budget, or George Uvari, who's another consultant from Ontario, he coined the phrase to have a red budget, an amber budget, and a green budget. Your green budget was the one you came into 2020 with, anticipating and creating your pricing and understanding how many employees you could afford and how much you could pay them and how many trucks and equipment and what you needed to dispose of, what you could afford to acquire. That all came into your 2020 budget. That budget now is shelved, and now you create an amber budget. And the amber budget, or 2 or 3 different amber budgets, what if you're shut down for 2 weeks? What if you miss 2 weeks of your season? What if you miss 4 weeks of your season? What if you miss 6 weeks of your season? whether or not it's 2 weeks, maybe the last 2 weeks of April or the first 2 weeks of April, but you guys had too much snow, so it wasn't an issue and you wouldn't normally start up. But what if there's a spike of COVID in July or August or September and the government has to shut everyone down for 2 weeks or 4 weeks? You need to have a budget in case that happens, because Health Canada, Dr. Theresa Tam, is telling us that it's most likely that there will be other recurrences and spikes in the population going forward. So, I mean, what's the name of the, is it Cargill, the beef processing plant?
Yeah, in south of Calgary.
Right. So there's an example of, wild and rampant community spread through a company and through a business. And so if that were a community, they would have to be shut down, right? And I think they're trying to they've put some wild measures in place, from what I understand from CBC, to try to get that resolved as quickly as possible. So we don't know where this is going to pop up and spike, because so many people are carriers and don't know that they're carrying it. So what has that got to do with your cash flow and your numbers? Has everything to do with your cash flow and your numbers for this year. You have to plan different scenarios. And so I highly recommend that you create an amber or a couple of different amber budgets. What if? And if it never happens, awesome. It was a great budgeting exercise. And if it does happen, you're prepared. You know where your break even is going to be. And then the red budget is the budget that you create when you know there is no possibility for recovering profit in the year, and there's no possibility of managing your cash flow anymore, depending on how long you would lose contracts and lose business for. I've heard everything from there's no impact at all on my business. I was just on a webinar prep call for tomorrow's webinar with the Landscape Association executives tomorrow, with Jeffrey Scott and Jim Palouche and Mark Bradley and Phil Harwood. I was on that call with them this morning, and Jeffrey, and he says, there is no impact of COVID on the industry in Louisiana at all. And I'm like, Ontario's shut down. So it's so different from region to region, and that can change depending on what happens with the demographic and the epidemiology. So you have to anticipate also and prepare to be recession proof. Because I think the spill out of this, if any of you have been watching the stock market in the last month, don't look at your investments, just notice what's happening in the stock market, because I break into a sweat every time I look at my investments. But you have to know that our economy is probably heading for some sort of a recession in the next 12 to 18 months, maybe a little longer. How's that going to impact your budget? How's that going to impact your business? And so you need to think about, you still have to start thinking about this, because you can't stick your head in the sand and pretend it's going to go away. So COVID has a huge impact on your cash flow numbers. Maybe not today, but it is going to going forward.
And before you go on, Jackie, I talked to a friend in BC yesterday, and they said in the last 5 to 8 days, they've gone from the worst April in company history to maybe the best ever.
Really?
That's how quick things turn. Yeah. So it's a very interesting change of events. And maybe that speaks to the optimism of, gardening and landscaping as an amazing outlet during this time. But, we can only hope in the rest of the prairies, and Ontario too, that it comes back around.
Absolutely. And it's so, the finishing question there is, how is your company going to survive in a different economic climate? And how is your company going to survive in a pandemic repeat?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So thanks, Joel. So the next C of the 5 C's is communication. And right now it's so important to communicate like never before. The hashtag Stronger Together is absolutely, completely true in this climate. You have to communicate with your staff like never before. You're probably noticing that there's going to be different ends of the scale here. Some staff are going to be nervous and worried. Some staff are going to be flippant and think it's all just a hoax. And then there's a group in the middle. And so you have to keep all of your staff safe. You have to follow the Health Canada and probably the provincial regulations on physical distancing and hand washing and sterilization of tools and all those wonderful things. So you have to make sure that you're communicating with your staff if they're laid off at the moment. Joel, are most people in Alberta, is the snow gone and most are out working now? Like, are they allowed to?
Yeah, people are starting to come back to work. I think our late spring this year has probably helped us really get prepared and really think about the issues. But it's people are sort of slowly going back to work. Spring cleanup starting this week, etc.
And is it slower than normal because of COVID or not?
I think so. It depends on who you talk to. Some people are full steam ahead, and others have had, residential construction. They've had clients walk away from project start times, etc. But I think that's just general nervousness that we see, whether it's a bad economy or COVID economy or whatever. So.
Right. Yeah, and so there's the two impacts, as you say. There's the economy, and then there's COVID. So customer confidence, if it's not shaky because of COVID, it might be shaky because of the economic outlook and their investments. So you have to communicate like never before with your staff, with your clients, with potential clients, which means your brand. What is the community seeing and hearing that your company is doing to keep people safe and to follow the health recommendations as a business? What about your suppliers? Are they intact? How are they managing it? Are they resilient? Can they continue their supply to you? Is their supply chain in good shape? And are they able to continue to get the supplies that they need in order to supply you? So these are important conversations to have that you would never think to ask a supplier, whether it's a nursery or a hard goods supplier. You might not think to ask them, but I don't know about, could you walk into a Home Depot right now in Alberta?
Yes.
Oh, see here, everything is curbside pickup. Everything. You can't walk into a Canadian Tire, a Home Depot, a Home Hardware, a garden set, nothing. You can only go into a grocery store and you got to wait. And anyway, it's all spaced out. But
yeah, they're doing limited customers in and everything else. But there's curbside pickup and all that fun stuff. What's your sort of experience about getting the message out to others about, you put all these measures in place for your staff and your clients, and how do you communicate that?
Well, great question. Maybe that's from the chat. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. One of which is to make sure that you've got policies in place and processes in place for hand washing and hand sanitizing and tool sanitizing and physical distancing. You've got to have them written down, policies and processes, and you should put them on your website. You should have them written and in every vehicle. You should make sure your crews are trained on them and all your staff is trained on them and signed off on them. You should let your customers know what to expect to see differently when your staff is on their site. So let's say it's residential maintenance, you need to let your customers know, are they allowed to come out and talk to your staff, or should they call the office? Or should they text the lead hand who's in the front yard and you give them their number in advance? What is your company's process for communication and for all of these measures that you have to put in place? You need to make sure that you're using your socials and leveraging them to get that information out there. Take pictures of your staff in PPEs. They can be doing selfies if they're wearing PPE. I've got a great fun video we're going to see in a couple minutes. But to communicate it, you've got to tell your safety story. Okay. I've got a little bit about the compliance piece coming up that we'll talk about, but for sure, in order to let others know what you've put in place, your subcontractors. I've got a client that phoned me up yesterday panicking because their staff have been trained on the physical distancing and stuff, and they're on a site, and because they're in construction, doing landscape construction, and in Ontario, you could only do landscape construction projects that were already underway with footings and permits in place pre-COVID. So they're on a site, and the subcontractors, there's several subcontractors, completely oblivious, ignoring everything, spitting and not staying physically distanced away from this my client's team, and the other guys are using their hand washing station that they have on site. Anyway, so making sure that you're communicating to your subcontractors, to your suppliers, what to expect when you guys show up. You need to know what they have in place, but put it on your website, put it on your social media, communicate it to your clients in an email, talk to them on the phone, make sure your staff have everything in writing and understand, and they've trained it and practiced it, because it ain't easy. Like, it's just not easy. And it's different. So you've got to be really diligent and keep learning. So the company culture piece, you know, where do I start? Company culture, it's the key to engagement here. There's layers. There's personal safety, there's community safety, there's activities and policies that everyone is going to need to be doing. But the key ones are, what's on your employees' minds with respect to coming back to work in COVID? What's on their minds? Their first thing is they want you to keep them safe. What does that look like? How are you going to do it? How do they know what you've put in place? You have to support them with empathy. What are you doing here in, and maybe you guys have to do this too, Joel, do people have to like take temperatures of every employee when they show up for work in the morning?
It's not required, but they're required to have protocols in place for like checking whether that's a questionnaire or that, but some employers are definitely doing the temperature.
Yeah. Okay. So keep it. That's the keeping me safe part is, how do I know that no one else on the crew has any symptoms or has a fever? Supporting people with empathy. Some people are afraid to let you know they've got a sore throat and a cough or a headache and they feel feverish. They may not have a fever yet because they're afraid of getting fired. They're afraid of getting laid off. You have to be able to support people with empathy. And maybe there's someone on your team whose spouse needs help at home. And so they might not be able to work their full hours because they're caring for someone else. So you got to be able to support people with empathy and show that, you're all in this together, but you really need to make sure that people understand that their safety is number one and all the things that you're doing. You have to let people know that they're valued. And I think all of us as entrepreneurs, we tend to get so focused on the details that we kind of forget about the feeling side and how to include people and ask them for their input. So let me contribute and remind me that I'm valued. Let people know that how much you appreciate them coming into work. More than you normally would. Let them know. Let them contribute to the policies. Let them contribute to the practices. Once you've gone through 3 or 4 days using, let's say it's having to declare when you come in the morning, fill out a form whether or not you have a fever. Maybe they're going to say, look, why can't we have one of those pointy thermometer things that you point to someone's forehead and it'll just check everyone's temperature in the morning? Okay, they're about $160. You can get them online from Amazon. Maybe that's the way to do it. So getting ideas from your team of how to streamline and how maybe where you've missed a few steps with respect to personal distancing and safety is really important. So engage your staff, ask for their input, and then energize them with hope. Make sure that they know how much that this is going to pass and how much better equipped the company is to keep everyone safe. There's always going to be extremes and there's always going to be extreme views. So there might be extreme periods of time where COVID is really high in your community. And there is also extreme views. Some of your staff may think it's a hoax, as I said earlier, and some may really be terrified. You've got to kind of try to lean into the majority of the herd and lean away from the conspiracy theories, lean away from the radical thinking, and make sure that you're moving forward and you're creating hope. That's a huge part of maintaining your company culture through all of this, is making sure that people don't feel bowled over and that they don't feel overwhelmed. So,
what do you do if employees are refusing to come to work?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, everyone has a right to refuse unsafe work, as we all know. I would tend to talk to them and learn why they're refusing to come to work and what would need to happen in order to change that decision. And I was reading on the Government of Canada website the other day about the CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, because there's a little bit of the refusing to come back to work happening here in Ontario for the companies that are up and working, for the lower wage earning employees that may be getting up to $2,000 or $500 a week from the CERB. And they're after, well, they don't realize they're going to have to pay tax on that, so they might not be thinking about that part, but it's just money in front of their eyes and money in their bank account, which they'll have to pay tax on in next year. But their net pay, if let's say they're a $17 or $18 an hour employee that works a 40-hour week, their net pay isn't going to be a whole lot different. So the question that we're hearing at this end of the country is, well, why would I come to work and put myself at risk to get COVID when the government is saying to self-isolate and stay at home for another $50 when I could do nothing and make $500? So there is something I read on the CERB section of the website that employees cannot refuse safe work if there is work available from their employer, an employer that they've already worked for. So you may want to look into that a little bit, but refusing to work, for sure they can refuse unsafe work. And as long as your company is following all of the prescribed measures that you have to have in place, then I think I would talk to them to learn why are they refusing to come to work, what would need to change in order for them to change that decision. And just, again, it's that empathy piece, right? It's the supporting them with empathy, reassuring them that you're keeping them safe, reminding them that they're valued, asking them for their input of how you guys could improve and tighten up your measures so that they would feel safe to come to work. Those pieces are a big part of helping to prevent people from refusing. Does that answer the question, Joel? Okay, I'm going to move to the next one here. Course of action. So one of the important things in any crisis is to be able to be decisive. And I've watched for the last 6 weeks, many people almost paralyzed by this, really having a hard time figuring out what to do, making a decision and moving forward. And so focusing on your course of action, making sure that you don't stay stuck, that you realize that there's going to be change, and what was valid a couple of weeks ago might not be valid now, might not be valid in a couple of weeks from now. You have to be patient with those phases. Different provinces, it's different across the country. Different provinces are reopening the economy in phases. So you have to be patient, but you also have to make decisions and plot out a course of action and then stick to it. Because as a leader in your company, your employees need to see you moving forward. They need to see leadership, and they need to see that there are decisions being made and that you're spending money, you're spending energy and money probably on moving forward. So this work on your business, I have been preaching this for years. So in a way, it's kind of helpful to be in a crisis situation like this that's unpredictable and unprecedented, because it has to force you to work on your business. You have to be willing and informed to pivot when you need to. And there's two important pieces there, knowledge and will. When you can mobilize the right knowledge, the facts, the information that you need to have in order to run your business in this climate, and you have the will to mobilize your people, and they have the will to take that information and knowledge and implement it and move forward, you can do anything. You need knowledge and will. And when you can mobilize both of those, then you're going to be able to move forward. But you need to be informed in order and to pivot when you need to. You need to be nimble and be decisive and prepared for that economic downturn and future outbreaks, because I'm really sure they're coming. I'm absolutely really sure that we are going to have a downturn.
Yeah, and a second wave or a third.
Yeah.
If we're being realistic. I think, Jacki, one thing I've noticed is like a paralysis, right? People are afraid to make the wrong decision. And what if that backfires? Or what if it's not what if the public health policy, the health and safety policies I put in place aren't enough? What if I'm not doing enough? Everyone's sort of and because it changes so fast, it's tough to make a decision without that fear.
It really is. And that's, it's a great question. I think first of all, you've always got to align your decisions with who the company is, with what the brand is, the core values, how professional, excuse me, the professional ethic of your company, to really make sure that you are always focused on building your team. So what decisions do I need to make? What information do I have available? What will can I mobilize so that the whole team doesn't stay stuck? And you know what? In this, with respect to what if it backfires? What if I haven't done enough? Hindsight's going to be 2020, right? We are all going to do this better the next time, all of us. And I think what you've got to remember is that, think about it this way. What decisions will you be able to look back on 6 or 12 months from now that you're proud of? Okay. So think about, what if I make a decision and it backfires? What if I haven't done enough? Get the knowledge that you need. Go to the Health Canada website. There's great information on the Health Canada website. Landscape Alberta has made lots of great resources available on their website, as most of the landscape associations have across the country. And so get the information, be informed, and then make sure that you're making decisions that are aligned with your own personal pride and ethic. As a business leader and as a business manager, your course of action doesn't need to be what someone else told you to do or what someone else is getting away with. It needs to be what's true to the core values of your company, and it needs to be decisions that you're going to look back on and be proud of. Does that make sense, Joel?
Very much so. That's excellent.
Yeah, I think that's the most important here, is to be able to look back with pride at the decisions that you did make and how well you equipped yourself and your team with knowledge and information. And remember, those of you that are business owners on this webinar, you don't have to do it all yourself. This is a great opportunity to engage your team. They want to contribute to this. They want to help build systems and processes that are compliant and that keep people safe. So engage them and delegate some of it to them. Don't think you have to do all this yourself, because you got enough on your plate. So here's a quote from David Wright from Wright Landscape Services. They have about 60 or 70 employees, and they do design, build, and landscape maintenance and snow. And a couple of weeks ago, David said this. He's sitting on a task force that I listen to a webinar every week that they're updating stuff on here in Ontario. And he says, we need to be safety companies who do landscaping. And I've heard, a similar expression that we're actually service companies who happen to do landscaping, as opposed to landscape companies who provide services. And the companies who think of themselves as service companies who happen to do landscaping tend to have a more loyal client base and tend to have more word-of-mouth referrals and more momentum with respect to their brand and engagement from their team. So when you add another layer, when you add this COVID layer and you start thinking about, we need to become safety companies who actually do landscaping, that really puts a whole different perspective on thinking about how COVID-19 and all of the things that you have to do, take people's temperatures and get them to answer a bunch of questions. And are they feeling unwell? And are they staying 6 feet apart? And are they hand sanitizing? And have you equipped them to wash their hands? And where are they using a washroom in the middle of their workday? And what does that look like? And how are they able to clean up after that? I think it's so important to think about, okay, first is safety at the moment. First is safety. I mean, safety is always important, but first is safety at the moment. And safety just looks different. It's not about hard hats and steel-toed boots. The PPE is different. It's additional PPE. I shouldn't say it's different because we're still wearing hard hats and boots. But so completely different concept of how important safety is and how it's defined at the moment. So what I wanted to do is show you a video. It's less than a minute long, so I won't bore you with a video, but what I want to know is can you pick out and throw on the chat for Joel to see, because I can't see the chat, but he can. Can you pick out any COVID measure oversights in this video? This is a great little video I found on YouTube. It's from Pacific Landscape Management. I think they're in California. And so let's just see if you can pick out something that here in Canada, we would probably be told isn't okay. Okay, so what did you find, Joel? Did anybody post anything? Joel, can you hear me?
I'd have to turn my mic back on.
Oh, there you go.
I know nothing in chat yet. I'm just waiting to see if anyone jumps in real quick.
So I'm going to share one thing that I saw that we've certainly had conversations about in a peer network here. The guy took the rake and he passed the rake over to his coworker in another garden. The guy put a pair of loppers or shears or something on the rake, brought the rake back to himself, grabbed them with his hands and started using them. Whereas those should have been sanitized, wiped down with Lysol wipes or spray 9 or some sort of
bleach water.
Yeah, so something in order to sanitize them. Or what's happening here, in most cases, each individual person on each crew has their own full set of tools. So that was one thing I picked up. And another one I picked up was the guy coming out of the outhouse. Bare hands, first of all. But anyway, came out of the outhouse, has hand on the handle on the outhouse, came out with the rake, and the other guy backed away, and then he just walked away. And what they're recommending here anyway is a hand washing station at every place where someone uses a washroom. There are some companies that have portable washrooms in enclosed trailers or portable washrooms inside enclosed trailers, which is a whole other layer of discussion. But they have a hand washing station that's on the tailgate of every truck when they're at a site. It's a portable camp water jug with paper towel and hand soap. And anyway, so those were the two things that I picked up out of there. But what a great way to just kind of make some fun out of it and maybe take that video and show it. Joel, you can post it on your website.
Yeah, for sure.
On your Facebook page or something. And so that your members can take that, at least show it to your staff and say, okay, how are we thinking about this? And how are we making sure that no one is getting any closer than they're supposed to at this point in time, and kind of try to have some fun with it.
Yeah, I really like the lunch break one where they're all sitting properly distanced.
Yes.
Having their break is nice. And we actually had a report here is that a construction site got closed down because they ran out of sanitizer in the porta potty. And no one said anything to the site supervisor. And occupational health and safety showed up and said, nope, you don't have proper supplies right now. And they shut, I think it was 200 people working on the site. That was a huge construction site kind of thing, right? But it's, when you go back to, you say, we're a safety company that does landscaping, you're, getting that buy-in from crew leaders to, you have to make sure supplies aren't running out just randomly, and relying on staff to tell you, like, that's a good thing to do is, hey, we're almost out of sanitizer. Do you want to, where's the refills? But you can't sort of guarantee that.
Yeah, and I think that's you hit one really great point there, Joel, that part of your safety process and your protocol needs to be about with respect to compliance, it needs to be about the proactive restocking. And so what's the process? If the hand sanitizer is low in the truck, what do we do? Where do we get more? At what point does it get to need to be refilled? At a quarter, at an eighth? You know, does everyone have their own bar soap? Or are we sharing a bar soap? Or what? So what are we doing? I've heard oh my gosh, I've heard so many different creative configurations of managing this, you know, employees taking their own vehicle to site. Every employee's given a portable water bag and their own bar soap and in a baggie with their name on it, and their own set of tools. And I've got a marine supply place near me, and I've had 2 of my clients come and get me to pick up for them 20-liter pails of Spray 9, because Spray 9 is on the Health Canada's website as an approved sterilisant against COVID. So they're using Spray 9 every night. All of the inside of their trailers, all of their tools, everything is sprayed down at the end of every day. It's just crazy. But those are safety companies who do landscaping, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So this is about the compliance piece. So this is all about the 5th C of COVID is the compliance piece. And the compliance, this I picked up off of your website, actually, Joel, off of the Landscape Alberta. It was a link that I clicked through on a couple of different links there that you guys have available on your resources. And just about how long does it live on surfaces? And so if it lives on plastic for 2 to 3 days, and it lives on cardboard for 24 hours, and non-porous surfaces for 4 days, which might be tool handles, controls in your equipment, how are you making sure that you're sanitizing after each person touches? I had someone with a garden center call me yesterday and ask, are we allowed to let our landscape customers, not the general public, as opposed to the retail customers, but the wholesale landscape contractor customers, use washrooms in the garden center? Because these guys are out, they can't find washrooms anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you got to go to the website resources and check for sure. But if you're not allowed to have them open to the general public, then you're not allowed to have them open to crews of people wanting to come in. They're kind of the general public as well. So it's so difficult. So training. You can't be a safety company unless you train. And so training is the hard part, and practicing, making sure that you maybe start your crews, if you have more than one crew, if you're starting your crews in staggered ways. So one crew starts at 7:15 at the shop, and one starts at 7:30, and one at 7:45. So you don't have the whole staff there all at the same time. And so the personal protective equipment, Joel, just what's that like for you guys at the moment? Are your members having a hard time getting PPE?
Yeah, a little bit. It's probably one of the biggest issues. We actually just through a health and safety officer that works for one of our big landscape contractors, have a source on sanitizer and masks. So if you go to our website, you can place orders until this Friday. And maybe I'm giving too much away, but I think we've done over $30,000 in sales in the last 3 or 4 days to members.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're doing it at cost, just as a service to a thing, and then so we're going to be in the curbside pickup business very shortly. But it's the new reality. So and I see a question in chat about truck drivers using minimum facilities, and if you have supplies delivered to your facility, and the best practice I've heard there is having a washroom dedicated for that audience. And I think that might be allowable. You just have to make sure all the sanitization materials are there, and there's some extra effort. Customers gets a little wilder in terms of knowing when someone's used it and when you need to sanitize it after, etc. So
well, you're almost into an attendant situation where you need if it's
the 1950s again. It's the 1950s again.
Yeah. If it's a garden center and it's the May long weekend and it's going to be busy, Have
You might want to, yeah.
an attendant, right?
Mhm.
I
heard a garden center using a brand new backpack sprayer filled with something like Spray 9. And then they can mist all the surfaces all at once and get a really good coverage rather than a spray bottle and everything else. But it also means you have to mix up less of it. You mix a big batch and everybody goes. So
yeah, it's a tough one to make sure you've got your hands on enough materials. And I know here locally, most of the distilleries are making hand sanitizer. And being in Muskoka, we have 11 microbreweries, and they're all making hand sanitizer. And also compounding pharmacies.
oh yeah.
Compounding pharmacies, if you have them there in your cities, they can make hand sanitizer as well.
Well, and I'll do my raw Alberta thing. Is all of our distilleries and breweries are doing next day home delivery.
Oh, sweet! So
which is like has like a dual win, right? Is you can get hand sanitizer that way, but you can also restock the happy hour supply.
With your beer, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so just this sort of final point here is training is just so important. You have to make sure that if it's about how often the bathroom gets cleaned at the office or at the store or at the shop, or how often the outhouse gets cleaned at the shop, there needs to be a policy, there needs to be a process, there needs to be a sign-off sheet, there needs to be a schedule, and there needs to be all the materials there and the people assigned to do it. And they've got to be trained on how to do it. The infamous commercial from one of the large chain hotels where they sent a hidden camera in to see how the bathrooms were being cleaned, and the lady flipped up the toilet seat, wiped the inside of the bowl with a cloth, put the toilet seat down, wiped the top of the toilet seat with the same cloth, and then went and wiped the taps at the sink with the same cloth. So
or worse yet, they wipe the glasses with that same cloth.
Yes, yeah, and the doorknobs. So you got to be thinking about it, and you've got to be mindful. So, I'll just finish up here by saying you've got to stay calm, and you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to these 5 different areas of business: your cash flow and your numbers, your communication at all levels, in all directions, the company culture, the courses of action that you're taking and being decisive, and compliance. Those are the 5 top key areas that you really need to pay attention to through, I don't know, I'd like to say the next 6 to 8 weeks, but it might be the next 6 to 8 months. It could be the next 16 to 18 months. I honestly don't know. So just a couple, just to let those of you that are interested know, this is sort of the Coles Notes high level $40,000 view of the boot camp. I'm running 2 boot camps for COVID and adapting quickly and growing forward through it. Just as a response to, like Joel, what you're doing, we're doing it at our cost for the marketing and all the online portals and stuff. And it's next week. So Monday to Friday next week, 1 hour in the morning, every day for 1 week. And it basically is each day we're going to spend an hour talking about cash flow and numbers. And the next day it'll be an hour talking about communication protocols and how to do that. The next hour will be about company culture and engagement through COVID. Thursday will be about the course of action, decisiveness. And then Friday will be an hour talking about compliance. So that's what the boot camp is. And there's also a COVID resource on my website as well, if anyone wants to look at some of those webinars that are on there. And there's a link there to the boot camp.
Thanks, Jackie. I think that's going to be amazing. The compliance aspect, we've had half a dozen phone calls about member companies not being in compliance on job sites from the general public, those kind of things. And unbelievably, everybody has been gracious and grateful about hearing about it. And just, and having that, it's a whole new world. So people go, we've done all the training, we've given them all the tools, but people are still struggling with complying with it on a job site. And so it's going to take time. So you have to, but using them positively rather than negatively is a powerful training tool. And so it's, and one of our members actually said, I told them people are going to be watching, and like their second day of work, someone called And so he's like, this is amazing. I get to go. See, I told you people were watching, and move on. So it's
that's where that, the communication piece, just going back near to the beginning,
mm-hmm.
about your potential clients, right? You never know who's watching.
And too many in residential. You have people home that were never home.
Yeah,
when you were doing work before, right? Like that's the scary part. Everyone's watching.
Yeah. Okay. And there's some great resources that you've got on your website, Joel. And then the NLE COVID-19 resource page, I went to that, and that's got some interesting stuff on it too.
Yeah, so and that has a map of all of North America, or US and Canada. Let's be fair to our friends in Mexico. And for I'd probably say 80% of the states and provinces have a link to their legislation, a link to the resource page from the associations. So if anyone's joining or watching this later from YouTube, then you can go and find info that's specific to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there we go. We're all set.
Any questions? I asked a few seconds ago in chat, Jackie, to get questions in now, but I haven't. Nothing's come through.
Okay.
But
so I
it's
guess
a busy time. Well, yeah, we can give it a half a second. But any closing thoughts? Or are you?
No, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come and talk about this, because I know how important it is, and I know how many of your members are stressed, and it's weird, and nobody knows if I've done enough or I haven't done enough. So I think it's great for Landscape Alberta to do this, and the leadership that you guys have shown, and like the creativity that's come out for so many businesses. But who knew that Landscape Alberta would be in the curbside delivery business, right?
Yeah, it'll, and maybe I'm giving away too much. It may be out of my home garage at this point, but we're just going to do what we can to make it happen and just try to help people. And we had really no idea how many. We'll see how many people order it, and it's just gone bananas, which is a good problem to have. But it means we're helping people get access to materials, right?
So for the people that are on here listening at the moment, how do they order?
You go to our website, and there is just an order form right there under the COVID resource. I think there's a banner up now, and any member should already get it. We're only doing it to Alberta members, unfortunately, because of the curbside pickup stuff. So,
but that's the benefit of membership.
Yeah, that's part of the benefit. We've actually opened it up to non-members as well, but just with the curbside pickup, I don't want to become Amazon and have to worry about logistics on hundreds of packages being picked up out of my garage. So we're going to do a Calgary and Edmonton workshop. Somebody just asked, what's your website address, Jackie?
Oh, my website. Well, thanks for asking. My website address is right here.
Oh yeah.
It's Consulting by Hart, HART, consultingbyheart.com. And the boot camp, there is a link there on my website, but the boot camp direct access is academy.consultingbyheart.com.
Sure. And we'll put those links. I've seen this on YouTube. We'll put those links below you in the link. I feel so modern. And we'll put those links and links to all the resource pages, etc., in the comments when we upload this to YouTube later today.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, yeah, take care of yourself.
I miss Alberta. Hopefully I'll be able to get out there, and who knows if we'll have GISC or we won't have GISC.
The plan still, we're going ahead with it, but it's a monitor day by day situation.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, everyone, wash your hands.